Okay, so let's dive into something pretty wild. Alice Weidel, the leader of Germany's far-right AfD party, had an online chat with Elon Musk. What's that about, and why should you even care?
Oh, what's fascinating here is that their recent live stream on X, formerly Twitter, wasn't just a casual conversation. It brought to light how business, finance, and global politics are all intertwined, especially with Weidel being the AfD's candidate for chancellor in Germany's upcoming election.
Yeah, you're right. It's not every day you see a tech billionaire like Musk openly endorse a political party, let alone one that's polling as the second strongest in Germany. This has capital gains written all over it.
Exactly. And to understand the potential ripple effects, we need to understand the AfD's platform. They've been gaining traction by tapping into economic anxieties and advocating for policies like lower taxes and tighter immigration controls.
So Musk essentially threw his support behind these policies, potentially swaying voters in a major European economy. That's a pretty big deal.
It is. And it gets even more complex when you consider that Musk himself doesn't live in Germany. This raises questions about foreign influence in elections, a topic that's sensitive worldwide.
Absolutely. So what exactly did they talk about in this live stream? Did they just bond over their shared dislike of German taxes?
Well, they went beyond that, criticizing not just the high taxes, but also Germany's immigration policies and the decision to shut down nuclear power plants. Weidel even specifically targeted former Chancellor Angela Merkel, blaming her for what she sees as Germany's current problems.
Sounds like they found some common ground in their criticisms. But weren't there some controversial statements made during this chat?
Yes, particularly from Weidel. She made a historically inaccurate claim about Hitler being a communist socialist, which has drawn a lot of criticism.
Wow, that's a bold and inaccurate statement to make. It seems like this whole situation is a bit of a powder keg. What are the potential consequences of all this?
Well, for Musk and his platform X, there's the issue of regulatory scrutiny. The EU Commission is already investigating X for potential violations of the Digital Services Act,
Right.
which aims to curb online hate speech and misinformation.
So Musk's endorsement of the AfD and allowing these sorts of statements on his platform could land him in hot water with EU regulators?
Potentially. And on a broader level, there's the concern that Musk platforming Weidel and the AfD could contribute to the normalization of extremist views, not just in Germany, but across Europe, where far-right parties are gaining popularity.
Okay, so there are some serious implications here, but let's bring this back to the heart of capital gains, the intersection of business, finance, and politics.
Yeah.
How could this online chat potentially impact the global economy?
Well, Germany is the largest economy in Europe, and a shift in its leadership, especially towards a party with the AfD's platform, could have far-reaching consequences.
Okay, help me understand this. How could a change in German leadership impact, say, my personal finances? It seems like a stretch to connect those dots.
It might seem that way. But remember, global markets are interconnected. Policy changes in Germany could trigger a chain reaction that impacts everything from trade agreements to investment flows to currency values.
So you're saying that decisions made in German government halls, potentially influenced by this whole Weidel-Musk situation, could eventually affect my wallet?
It's not a direct line, but yes, those decisions can have a ripple effect on the global financial landscape.
Wow. This is getting pretty complex. So are we saying that everyone listening to Capital Games should be brushing up on their German politics now?
It's not just about Germany. It's about understanding how seemingly isolated events can have global repercussions, especially when business, finance, and politics are intertwined.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
And that's what's so important, because when you understand these connections, you can make more informed decisions both in your personal life and your finances.
All right, so we've laid out the potential political and economic fallout, but we haven't really talked about the Digital Services Act yet and why it's such a big deal in this case.
That's a crucial piece of the puzzle, because the DSA represents a major shift in how online platforms are regulated, not just in Europe, but potentially globally.
Okay, let's unpack that. What exactly does the Digital Services Act entail?
Well, the DSA is designed to hold platforms like X accountable for the content they host, especially when it comes to hate speech, misinformation, and illegal activity. It requires platforms to be more transparent about their algorithms and content moderation practices.
So no more hiding behind the black box of algorithms. Platforms will have to be more open about how they decide what users see.
That's the idea. And if they don't comply, the EU Commission has the power to impose hefty fines, restrict their operations within the EU, or even block access to the platform entirely in certain countries.
Wow, they have some serious teeth. So Musk isn't just risking bad press here. He's potentially putting his entire European operation on the line by aligning himself with the AFD
Mm-hmm.
and allowing this kind of content on X.
Precisely. And remember, this isn't just a European issue. Regulators around the world are grappling with how to regulate online platforms. The outcome of the EU's investigation into X could set a precedent for global online regulation.
So what you're saying is
Right.
this seemingly isolated incident in Germany could actually shape the future of the internet as we know it.
Absolutely. It's a real-time test case of how to balance free speech with the need to protect against harmful content and foreign interference. And the outcome could have far-reaching implications for how we consume information, engage in online discourse, and even conduct business in the digital age.
Okay, I'm officially mind blown. A tech billionaire, a far-right politician, a controversial live stream, and a whole lot of regulatory scrutiny.
Yeah.
Who knew it could get this complex?
It is, and it underscores the importance of understanding how business, finance, and politics are intertwined, often in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about Weidel and the AFD, Musk's endorsement, the controversial statements, the potential for foreign influence, and the broader implications for politics and economics. But there's still one piece of the puzzle I'm not quite grasping.
What's that?
Why is the EU Commission so concerned about X violating the Digital Services Act?
Yeah.
What exactly does that entail? And what kind of power do they have to actually do something about it?
That's a great question. And it takes us right to the heart of the battle for online regulation. The Digital Services Act is a pretty big deal. It's designed to hold platforms like X accountable for the content they host, especially when it comes to things like hate speech, misinformation, and illegal activity.
Okay, so it's about keeping the online world a little safer and more accountable. But what does that mean in practice? What could actually happen to X if they're found in violation of the act?
That's where things get interesting. The EU Commission has some serious teeth when it comes to enforcing these regulations. They can impose hefty fines, restrict X's operations within the EU, or even block access to the platform entirely in certain countries.
Wow, that's a lot of power. So Musk isn't just risking bad press here. He's potentially putting his entire European operation at risk by aligning himself with the AFD and allowing this kind of content on his platform.
Precisely. And this isn't just a European issue. Regulators around the world are grappling with how to deal with the power of social media platforms. And this case could set a precedent for future enforcement actions.
So what you're saying is this seemingly isolated incident in Germany could actually have global ramifications for the way online platforms are regulated.
Absolutely. It's a real-time test case of how to balance free speech with the need to protect against harmful content and foreign interference, and the outcome could shape the future of the internet as we know it.
Okay, I'm officially mind blown. A tech billionaire, a far-right politician, a controversial live stream, and a whole lot of regulatory scrutiny. Who knew it could get this complex?
And we haven't even touched on the potential economic fallout yet.
Right. Let's circle back to that. You mentioned that a shift in German leadership towards the AfD could shake things up globally. But what does that look like in practical terms? Give us some concrete examples.
Well, think about trade relationships. Germany is a major player in the global economy, and the AfD has a much more protectionist stance than the current government. If they were to come to power and start enacting those policies, it could disrupt trade flows, increase costs for businesses, and ultimately impact consumer prices around the world.
So that new gadget I've been eyeing could suddenly become a lot more expensive.
It's a possibility. And it's not just about consumer goods. We're talking about everything from raw materials to energy to financial services. A shift in German policy could create a ripple effect across the entire global supply chain.
And that's not even factoring in the potential impact on investment flows.
Exactly. Investors are always looking for stability and predictability. A sudden change in government, especially one towards a party with more radical views, could spook investors and lead to capital flight.
Capital flight, what does that mean?
It means investors pulling their money out of a country or region because they're worried about the political or economic climate, and that can have a devastating impact on a country's economy.
So we're talking about a potential chain reaction. Political instability leads to economic uncertainty, which leads to capital flight, which further destabilizes the economy. That's a bit of a domino effect.
It is, and it highlights the interconnectedness of our world. What happens in one country, especially a major economic power like Germany, can have far-reaching consequences for all of us.
Okay, let's bring this back to our listeners. What does this all mean for the average person trying to make sense of this complex world?
Yeah.
And maybe even make some smart financial decisions?
That's the key question, isn't it? The takeaway here is that we can't afford to ignore what's happening in the world of politics, even if it seems far removed from our daily lives.
So we should all be paying attention to German politics now.
It's not just about Germany. It's about understanding how global events, political shifts, policy changes, and yes, even social media live streams can ultimately impact our wallets.
And how do we do that? I mean, it's hard enough to keep up with our own lives, let alone decipher the complexities of global politics and finance.
It's definitely a challenge, but that's why we're here.
You're saying capital gains is the answer to all our problems.
Not quite, but we can help you connect the dots, break down complex issues, and provide the context you need to make informed decisions both in your personal life and your finances.
Okay, I like that. So if we're trying to stay ahead of the curve here, what are some key things our listeners should be watching out for in the coming weeks and months?
First, keep an eye on the German elections. The outcome could have significant implications for the global economy, as we've discussed.
Right, the election is scheduled for February 23, 2025. That's less than a month away.
It is, and the race is tight, so pay attention to the polls, the debates, and the news coverage leading up to the election.
Got it. What else should we be watching?
Second, watch how the EU Commission handles the investigation into X. Will they impose fines? Will they restrict X's operations? The outcome could set a precedent for how social media platforms are regulated around the world.
And that could have a ripple effect on everything from online speech to data privacy to the way we consume information.
Exactly. And finally, pay attention to the broader economic trends. Are we seeing increased volatility in the markets? Are businesses becoming more cautious about investment?
Are we heading towards a recession?
It's too early to say, for sure, but it's always wise to be prepared for economic fluctuations.
Okay, that's a lot to digest.
It is. But remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about the forces shaping our world, the better equipped we are to navigate them and make smart decisions for ourselves and our families.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we've talked about the potential fallout from this Weidel Musk live stream. But let's shift gears for a moment and focus on you, the listener. How can you navigate this complex world of intertwined business, finance, and politics? How can you make smart decisions when it feels like events halfway across the world could impact your wallet?
Well, that's where staying informed and understanding the bigger picture becomes crucial. It's not about becoming an expert on German politics overnight, but rather about recognizing how global trends and events can create ripple effects that eventually reach your doorstep.
So where should our listeners even begin? It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this information.
A good starting point is understanding the forces at play. For instance, the AfD's rise in Germany is partly fueled by economic anxieties. Similar to what we've seen with other populist movements globally, these anxieties are often rooted in issues like globalization, automation, and income inequality.
So by understanding these underlying trends, we can better anticipate potential political and economic shifts, not just in Germany, but in other countries facing similar challenges.
Exactly. It's about connecting the dots. If the AfD, with its protectionist policies, gains more power in Germany, what could that mean for global trade? Could it lead to higher prices for imported goods? Could it impact investment decisions? These are the questions you should be asking.
That makes sense. It's not just about reacting to the news, but about anticipating potential consequences and making informed decisions based on those insights.
Precisely. And remember, information is power. The more you understand about these interconnected forces, the better equipped you'll be to navigate them and make choices that align with your financial goals.
So we're not just talking about passively watching the news. We're talking about actively engaging with the information, analyzing it, and using it to make smarter decisions in our own lives.
Absolutely. And that's where Capital Gains comes in. We're here to help you break down complex issues, connect the dots between business, finance, and politics, and empower you to make informed choices in a rapidly changing world.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
Stay curious, stay informed, and never underestimate the power of understanding how the world truly works. What might seem like a distant political event can have a very real impact on your personal finances.
And remember, we're here with you every step of the way, helping you make sense of it all. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the intricate world of capital gains. We'll catch you next time for another insightful exploration.